All of time and space. Everywhere and anywhere, every star that ever was. Where do you want to start?
Hello friends, gang and listeners, and welcome back to All of Time and Space, a Doctor Who podcast. You might have seen them. This episode we have enjoyed immensely our time aboard the Ark, but enough shilly-shallying, it's time to look at one of the all-time classic, great top 10, great classic stories of Doctor Who, the Celestial Toymaker. I'm Ian.
And I'm Mark, and I really can't wait to get into this one, so let's get up to speed with where we are in the story. Somewhere outside space and time there waits the Celestial Toymaker, an enigmatic being who ensnares unwary travellers in his domain to play out his dark and deadly games. Separated from the security of the TARDIS, the Doctor is forced to play the complex trilogic game with the evil magician. Meanwhile, Dodo and Stephen must enter into a series of tests with, among others, the schoolboy Cyril and the King and Queen of Hearts. If they lose, they are condemned to become the Toymaker's playthings for all eternity, for in the malevolent wonderland that is the Celestial Toy Room, nothing is just for fun. And we'll be back after this.
What's this extraordinary thing? Well, I'm not quite sure, dear boy, but it's somewhat familiar.
It looks dead boring to me. Come on.
No, wait, child, wait.
Why?
But I don't think it was the Refusian influence that made me become intangible. No, I think it was something here. And I don't like the feel of the place any more than you do. But we'll have to face up to it. You know, I think I was meant to come here. Hey, look! That's me!
What is?
Here, on the screen.
What screen?
Here! That's me on the planet Kimball.
There's nothing there.
I believe I now know where we are. It's changed again. There I am in Paris. Now turn around this instant. Come away from it, dear boy. Now in the world of the Celestial Toymaker. On that screen is hypnotic. It's trying to dominate your mind. But, Doctor, there is nothing there. Do you understand me? There is nothing there at all. You must believe me. What was it? What happened?
What's the matter, Doctor? I couldn't see anything on the screen.
Come here, child. Now, whatever you do, you must not allow yourself to be trapped into looking at it.
Who's the Celestial Toymaker?
He's a power for evil. He manipulates people and makes them into his playthings. Whatever you do, neither of you must look at that screen. It's a trap.
What a spoiled sport you are, Doctor. They liked my memory when...
You... I might have guessed.
Of course. I've been waiting for you a long time.
Where's the TARDIS?
Don't worry, my dear. Just watch over there.
It's me, the day my mother died.
No, wait for it this instant.
What a shame. I thought my little invention would amuse you.
You and your inventions. Now, both of you be very careful. This place is a hidden menace. Nothing is just for fun. What's the idea? He's trying to get us into his power. That's why we've got to fight him.
Well, can't we just go? I hate this place.
My dear, but how? That is the question.
In the TARDIS, of course, as always.
There are many of them. Take your choice.
There are hundreds of them.
Yes, hundreds. Come, Doctor.
No. Doctor!
Have you gone invisible again?
No, he's gone. That man's taken him away.
I don't like it. We should never have stayed.
It's too late now.
Who was that man?
I don't know. We've got to find the Doctor.
And welcome back. And we are joined by two very special guests today. We're having a Midlands takeover of All of Time and Space. Our first of our illustrious guests is the magnificent Jeff Goddard. Hello, Jeff.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. And secondly, but by no means least, the king of podcasting himself, the captain of Trek This Out, none other than Lord Sucky of Kark.
Oh, that's a wonderful introduction. Can I copy and paste that into my own?
Well, I thought I'd just give you a little bit of a taste of the quality of reverence that should be given to you on your other podcast that you're on, because that does seem to be sadly lacking.
Well, thank you.
From your co-host.
I'm glad somebody has noticed this sort of thing. But yes, I will be
I mean,
copying.
you are the
pasting.
oldest man in the room, so we do have to show you due deference.
They'll be like that. You don't have to go there, Mark. You did not have to go there at all.
Oh, I just put that in there for Bob, just in case he was listening.
Bob, the young
Hey, Bob.
whippersnapper.
Yeah. Thank you both so much for coming on. It's a real treat to have you guys along. But before we get into our lovely topic for this evening, Ian.
Yes, guys, I'm afraid it's time for you both to face the mind probe.
No, not the mind probe.
No! Not the mind probe!
Getting to know
Who?
Getting to know all about.
Who?
Oh,
Just-
sorry. Was that meant to be
Holy
the other way
moly.
around? No, not the
Just
mind
two
probe.
ways in which Jericho could have taken that line. If only he'd thought to, give a little. Anyway, to cut a long story short, regular listeners will know that what we'd usually have at this point is a really good quiz that I would have written slavishly. But Mark has broken the time lash.
Yes, it's all my fault.
He's making absolutely no effort to fix it either.
I mean, do you want me to just fire it up now to see if we can get it to work?
Oh,
No.
I mean, you'll probably just blow up the microphone or something.
Well, let's give it a go. Hang on a
Go
minute.
on then.
Okay. Oh, it's making the usual startup noise. That's good. Oh. Oh no, that's
What's happening?
well.
Can you take a look at our time?
It's making a very odd noise. I don't think that's right at all.
Hello?
Wait, did you hear something then?
Hello?
Does that sound like someone?
There's a sort
Can
of
anyone
talking,
hear me?
sort of twang I could hear very faintly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it like a sort of a didgeridoo or something?
Kind of, yeah.
bloody
Yeah, we'll have to come back to
Okay,
that at
all
a
right,
later
well-
date.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's still not working, so
Yeah.
we'll have to go back to Plan B, I'm afraid.
So, guys, it's just a kind of informal welcome to the show, getting to know you kind of Q&A session, and I just want your, your the first answer that comes to you. It's not. There's no prizes. There's no money. This isn't Bullseye.
That's it. Sucky's off.
I wanted about in the Midlands, yeah.
So we're going to start with Jeff. Jeff, what would you say was your favourite Cyberman story of all time?
Probably Earthshock, because it was my first Cyberman story.
That's a very good answer and puts us
That is a very
both
good shout.
in the same division. Suki, what's your favourite unit story?
Is there a good unit story?
It's a trick question.
Oh, sacrilege.
Let's go with Inferno, because there's two different sides of unit in there.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
quite a clever answer, actually, yeah.
Okay, Jeff, it's a rainy Sunday afternoon. You've got literally nothing else to do, so you're going to watch a Doctor Who story. What do you pick?
The Rescue.
I didn't
It's
see
the correct
that.
answer.
The Rescue is...
You've never mentioned you loved that story before, Jeff.
This may come as a shock to some people, but I love The Rescue. It is
And
it's
so do I.
comfy
Yes.
slippers Doctor Who to the maximum degree. I love it.
Oh,
Yeah.
Great answer.
Good choice.
Very good heartfelt response. On a similar heartfelt note, Suki, what's the worst Dalek story of all time?
Worst dark story. I've fallen asleep on a number of occasions through Destiny.
What you've done there, you've gone straight to the heart of Cochrane. You've said season 17 is a
How
load
dare
of
you,
rubbish.
Sucky?
You're not going to be invited back. Oh my word. Final question for Jeff. What's your favourite story from the black and white era? I think we might have already answered that question.
I kind of double dipped here, haven't I?
You have.
Okay.
Apart from the rescue, Jeff, what's your favourite story from the black and white era?
The Daleks.
Staunch choice.
Yeah. That was my first real dip into the black and white era as a kid when I got the double VHS. And yeah, I've just loved it ever since. It's just atmosphere. Love it.
Great stuff. And Suki, what was the worst story produced in the 1980s?
Worst story?
Wow, just one.
Don't help him.
Why have I got... I think I've had more negative questions than positive ones. Let me just have a look over my shoulder. No, let's just go with Twin Dilemma.
That's definitely the right answer. That gets 10 points. Here endeth the informal chat. Mark, it's time to get rigorous and brutal.
Uh-oh.
Well, I assume you're talking about the story we're going to talk about and nothing else.
No comment.
Okay, right. Well, moving on very swiftly. The Celestial Toy Maker. Firstly, can I just apologise to both of you? I mean, somebody had to come on to talk about this story.
But it was us that you chose, wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't,
Yeah.
because I like you both, which is weird. Why would I ask you both on for this one? First time round watching this, I think I have a sneaking suspicion what Ian's first viewing of this would be, or when. Sucky, when was the first time you experienced this? Would it have been a Target book, or was it the audio? Or
Yeah, it would have been the Target book. The book came out, early 90s, maybe late 90s or whatever it was. It was some very long time ago. And I remember reading that. I quite enjoyed the book, right? It was a nice, quick read. But then you go to the audio, and I listened to the audio because I did a complete run-through of all the episodes a few years ago. And I listened to the audio, and it wasn't memorable. And if I remember correctly, I might have fallen asleep through that as well. Right, so, and I was working on the night shift at the time, so I don't know how I managed to operate a machine.
Good lord!
And then I've had to watch it or listen to it again for these for your episode, and I've listened to it twice on two different night shifts, and I found there was some stuff in it that I really enjoyed, which was Michael Gough as a toy maker, because he's quite menacing in the background, talking the way he does, even though he hasn't got nobody really to interact with, because William Martin was away for two episodes. So I do like him. I did like some of the background characters played by the same actors and actresses. Yeah, right, and they were quite decent. It's just the story was too long, and it just bored me rigid on occasions. And I did tell you this, Mark, when you initially asked us. I says this is a terrible story. I will fall asleep, and because I was on a night shift, I couldn't fall asleep. But it is.
Well,
there's a very interesting picture that's emerging here, Suki, that you've essentially slept through 60 years of Doctor Who. Were there any stories that kind of you stayed awake for, or kind of woke you up with how good they were?
Oh, there's loads of stories that keep me awake. There's loads of stories, but when you get around, you're always going to get the odd one, which is going to make you fall asleep, or just going to bore you rigid, or you're just going to go, what the hell are they thinking or doing or saying? And it just does wind you up. And you just...
I know which one kept Sucky awake.
Go on then, Mark, let me know.
The air zone solution.
Pardon? What was that?
The air zone solution.
Oh, man. That was, I'm not saying anything about that one.
Yeah. Anyway, let's get off that subject. Jeff.
Hello.
Do you have a similar story to tell to Sucky, or did you hear the audio first, or what was your experience with it?
I saw the Telesnap Recon about 15 to 20 years ago, I think, and it didn't do a lot for me because I still hadn't really clicked with the later Hartnell stories by that point, so I just sort of forgot about it. It didn't leave much of an impression.
No.
So the most recent time I've seen this since then was this week, and I've watched the Telesnap Recon, the loose cannon one, twice this week. Which it's a really well made recon, actually.
Yeah,
I'm applauding your bravery. Watching that thing twice. That deserves a special medal.
To be honest, them loose cannon ones, they're actually quite decent, and they're well made, and the way they're put together just from little pictures here, there, and everywhere, right? And that's surviving episodes to make a really good visual thing for you to watch while you listen to the audio.
It helps.
Yeah, I'm impressed. Yeah,
it helps, especially in the first episode where there's about 10 minutes of silence and honking and oh my,
that's my love life.
I think we might have the episode title for this one: Silence and Honking.
Silence and honking. I can't imagine listening to that just on audio without the visuals. It's a mess. You need those pictures to just give it that depth, I think. I can't.
I'm going to try really hard to play devil's advocate here and say that possibly this story might fare better if you could actually see the actual program, the moving images. And that might well raise it up a bit, but as things stand, it's not the most enjoyable. Ian?
I think this story would only get worse if we were able to watch it. And it's starting from a very low base. My experience of this story, I remember seeing the Target book every time I'd go into Smith's as a kid, but it was somehow never the one I'd walk away clutching. I never felt the urge to, as a 12-year-old kid, I never felt the urge to buy Sky or BSB, so I never watched anything from the Hartnell era at all, really, until we started doing this show. And while I've always been aware from reading Doctor Who: A Celebration, I've always been aware that the Celestial Toymaker is arguably the greatest Doctor Who story ever made. I'd never actually got round to it until this very week, like everyone I've experienced it, done my homework. I finished watching it about 3 hours ago, and this is where I should apologise to the listener. I have drunk very heavily for the last 3 hours in an attempt to, I suppose, regain equanimity, some sort of human feeling, compassion, and also a sense of feeling in my legs, which had evaporated, and I came very close to wandering onto a large motorway and because oh my Lord, oh dear Lord. Yes,
I mean, there is the consolation that you don't have to watch it again.
Well, I shan't. and that's my final word on the subject.
Or what if they do a really super groovy animated version of it on Blu-ray?
It makes no odds to me.
The audio, as you've all been saying, it is quite boring. It's quite lengthy, and there's a lot of things that are happening in the background, which is visual, right? And you can't hear it or see it, basically, because you listen to the audio, right? So if this was ever animated, there would be some really good set pieces in there.
Yeah.
Which is like Sergeant Rugg and Mrs. Wiggs having a fight, right? You could really see all that happen. Probably the dancing section, right? That might be a little bit better than what it comes across on the thing. But it's just as I think, I mean, the pictures do show you when you've seen all these little lovely pictures that they've actually taken during production.
Yeah.
That it is quite a bright colourful production, but it's lost in the black and white telly snaps that we've got.
There's a great deal of imagination that's gone into it, but it doesn't feel like that's coming across in the story, does it?
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Okay, let's try and think of some positives. Stephen and Dodo, where do they rank? Jeff, where do they rank for you amongst the companions?
I quite like Stephen and Dodo. I really do, and I don't really get all the Dodo hate either, because she's just quite quirky and fun to watch. She's a little bit shrill sometimes, so listening to her isn't quite as much fun. But do you know what? She's all right. She's not Vicky.
I think some of the companions suffer. No, that's true. She's not Vicky. We love Vicky. She's possibly struggling a bit because a lot of her stories are missing.
Yes.
So that's probably not going to help her cause.
I think as Ben and Polly have had more stories released and been animated, they've elevated a little bit in fan opinion, and I think Dodo could benefit from that as well. I think it's really sad that any of them are missing episodes because they've all gone out and given it their best, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Sucky, what about you? Where does Stephen rank for you in the male companions?
Stephen is one of my favourite companions. Has been for many, many years. Right, he's in an era where William Hartnell was coming onto the programme and then taking a week off, taking a back step, and all the other characters come forward. And Stephen was sometimes carrying the show, or whole stories by himself. The Massacre, where he's playing. There's no First Doctor in there virtually, right? And that story is again just an audio delight because I just really love that story, the way it comes across. And there's other stories where he is the main star of the show, right? Even though Hartnell is there, but Stephen seems to be like a better character. This story, unfortunately, there's a couple of places where he just comes across as a git, right? He just comes across as a git. There's a couple of occasions where he's just abrupt with people he's only just met. I don't know if he's like he just hates them at first sight, but he's just like, what are you going to do about it? What are you saying that for? Right? He just comes across as very obnoxious. And I just don't know if, because the background of this is about 3 or 4 different writers for this story, but Stephen was a well-established character already, right? Yeah. And for some reason, he just didn't seem. He seemed to be going off in this, that, and other directions, and he just disappointed. Dodo, I've not really experienced too much of her.
There's not that much to experience.
This is it. I mean, except for the audios, that's about it. War Machines, I haven't really seen it, but she was only in for a little bit in that. So I can take the characterisation of Dodo. Here, it's a hit and miss characterisation depending on the story that she's in. Sometimes she's really good, like the Gunfighters, where her and Stephen are just bouncing off the Doctors. She's bouncing off the Doctor. In other stories, as Jeff says, she's a bit shrill.
But is that down to what she's been given, or is that? I don't think it's really her fault as such.
No, it's not her fault. But as you said, there's a lot of background to these sets of episodes at this era of the Doctor Who production, because there's like producers coming and going, story editors were coming and going.
Yeah,
there was a lot of
like a revolving door, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a lot of turmoil behind the scenes, and her characterisation, or her somebody maybe telling her this is the way this character should be portrayed, right? Is somehow lost, and she had no guidance.
No, it does feel that way. And going back to what you were saying just a second ago about the turmoil behind the scenes, that leads into quite a big part of this particular story, the fact that William Hartnell, for large swathes of the story, is either invisible or unable to speak. And it sounds as though, I mean, admittedly, there's a lot of this is getting it third hand, but it does sound very much like they were really trying their best to get a shot of him. And there was, I've heard talk of when he came back from being invisible, it was going to be a new actor, and he would have been gone.
Yeah. They were really desperate to get rid of him because of his health, because of his and that affected his mood and temper and behaviour off camera. But you know what? When he is on screen in this, he is really good. He's really good. And the reason this episode feels like a chore is because he's not in it enough.
Well, Ian was defending him in our last episode. He was saying how good his performance in the Ark was.
Oh, he's great, yeah.
Yeah, I think in the Ark it kind of felt like I mean, so here we are, we're still talking about season 3 of Doctor Who. I feel like we've been working our way through season 3 for about 10 years at this point, and there's still another 3 or 4 stories to go, and I mean, my God. So I'm tired just watching it. Hartnell must have been exhausted, and I felt with the Ark, it was like the start of a 4th series. He was so refreshed and so on it. And then suddenly in this story, as you know, from the sort of cliffhanger at the end of the Ark, he's suddenly invisible, and he's the victim of the toy maker playing games with him, and you don't see him for 3 weeks. You see a hand and you hear some pre-recorded dialogue, and I thought when he came back, so I'm talking primarily about part 4, I you know, I'm not picking a fight with you, Jeff, but I thought he looked kind of exhausted and ill and really just not. You know, he's been brilliant in the Ark. He's then had 2 or 3 weeks off to go back to Cyprus and pick grapes or whatever it is he does on holiday. And he comes back for part 4 of this, and he looks like he hasn't slept for 3 days, you know. It's extraordinary. So, yes, the illness, I think, is very much informing his performance.
It was taking its toll by now. It's sad, because if he'd have been in good health, you just wonder what it could have been.
Yeah.
Well, I was just thinking, because he was informed that, or he may have heard the background rumours that he was going to be replaced at the end of this story, right, by a different actor. Just what Celestial Toymaker just suddenly switches his body over to somebody else, right? Yeah. He might have just thought this could be the end of his character, his run on the show. So he's probably harassed, and then when he does come back, he's probably in the mood. This is my show. The producer that initially wanted him up has gone. He's got a new producer. He wants to show who's the boss. Maybe he comes across, instead of looking tired, maybe he's coming across as, I'm in charge now. I'm looking after, this is my show and stuff.
There's very few Billy fluffs in this either. Very few. There's more fluffs from the rest of the cast than there are from him.
Yeah, that is true. I did pick up on that. And there's quite a few fluffs on the part of the writer, whoever that was.
Well, take your pick, because it wasn't Brian Hales.
Well, no. So he handed in his draft, and then was it Donald Tosh extensively rewrote it, and then someone else had another pass, and no one wanted to put the name on it.
Rewrote it
Jerry Davis.
Yeah. It should be said that Donald Tosh was never afraid to claim credit for something that.
Well, he was afraid to claim credit for this. Even Donald Tosh didn't want his name on this bad boy, so they went with putting it out under Brian Hales' name, and he was lucky to find work again as a result of this. But it's the work of many masters.
Well, I remember reading Peter Haining's Key to Time, and I think it had been in the Celebration book as well, how it was lauded as one of the all-time classics.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean,
maybe they're seeing something that we aren't.
No, well,
they saw it, probably.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean.
But you got like Peter Haining. He's probably interviewing fans that have watched the actual episodes, and they've all remembered it in a really good light, because it probably was, a different sort of story to what they've been used to, and they quite liked it. But of course, when you years later and you're watching it or trying to watch it or listen to it, and you just think to yourself, no, it's not a really good story. I mean, Doctor Who magazine...
Are you saying the memory cheats, Sucky?
I'm not saying anything like that. Not saying anything.
That's the last hiding place of the rogue.
It's true, though. Imagine, if you were asked to try and think back to a show you watched as a kid some 20 years before, it would have stuck out as quite a memorable one because you've got the whole thing with the, it's quite a surreal story, isn't it? Because this is way before the Mind Robber and anything like that.
I was going to say, it feels like a precursor to the Mind Robber, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah.
But not a very good one.
No.
Well, I mean, time will tell how we judge the Mind Robber. We'll come to that eventually. But yeah, I mean, it must have left some kind of impression because they were going to bring him back for season 23, the abandoned season 23 with Colin Baker.
But that's still early 80s, isn't he? And early 80s, Celestial Toymaker was still considered a classic.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It has, since them Peter Anning books have come out, the Doctor Who magazine, when that was really championing this story as well. It's actually gone down in estimation. So they, in the early 80s, they would have said, yeah, we'll bring Celestial because it's well remembered, it's well regarded story, we'll bring him back. But then now people probably look at the story and go, yeah, it's a bit boring, it's a bit long, it might be a bit flashy, but the character probably won't be brought back except maybe in Big Finish.
Yeah. It's funny how perceptions change, isn't it? Because back then Celestial Toymaker was seen as this lost classic and the Gunfighters was treated as terrible.
Yeah.
Absolute rubbish. But over the last probably couple of decades, they seem to have really completely swapped around, haven't they? For a lot of people anyway.
But as I said, that's because you had super fans champion certain stories because they'd seen them and liked them when they were kids and didn't like other stories. So those opinions filtered down to every other person.
I mean, to be fair, I really love Orphan 55. I do understand that it's, for some people, really, really not a good episode, but I love it.
Yeah, I do.
So, yeah, I mean, there's...
You can scream Benny all you want. I think it was one of the best episodes in the last series.
We use Benny in our show, in our episodes.
I know.
Right, so we have a bit of a fond thing for Orphan 55 as well.
So we're all agreed on the basics. When there's a good story, we can all identify it. So we are all right. There's no... It's not like we've all taken leave of our senses.
Other opinions are available.
I mean, to be honest with you, I don't dislike Toymaker. I just don't anything it. It's just there. It's entertaining enough to sort of pass 90 minutes. Mostly. I've done it twice. I may have Stockholm
That's true,
syndrome.
you have.
It's...
Yeah.
But
Jeff has finally lost it.
It just feels a bit like watching Space Play School with all the obstacle courses and the jumping around on big triangles, just with a malevolent twist. Which was Play School.
You were going to
anyway.
say a malevolent twit.
It's almost like an episode of Crackerjack, isn't it?
That's it. That's what I was trying to think. It's like a Christmas episode where they bring everybody together just to play a silly game. And that was that's
but
what
if you touch the floor, you die.
Yes. I mean, I'm sure they would have done that on Crackerjack if they could afford the budget.
Yeah.
And I would have watched it. But I think it's interesting that they, at the end of the story, the Toymaker's lair is for that one shot revealed to be on some kind of desert planet, which then immediately explodes. But the Doctor's pretty sure he'll be back. And as a viewer, and even a viewer like myself, who perhaps doesn't think this is Doctor Who's finest moment, would concede that the Toymaker was really quite brilliant as a character and as a performance. Yeah. So, yes, bring him back straight away next year. Bring him back for every Doctor. If he's an unkillable Eternal, then let's just have him turn up every few years, like most sci-fi shows do with their recurring Eternal villains. So,
did you have a little shiver up the spine when they mentioned the Toymaker in Can You Hear Me?
Yeah. Well, yes. I mean, guys, it was but so why did they never bring the Toymaker back until John Nathan Turner of all people had the idea himself?
With all the production behind the scenes things that was happening, there was one set of production team that actually set it up as a Celestial Toymaker, and another production team that had all the headaches with that story. So they probably decided, it's just too much effort. And that production team, I think, was there till well into Patrick Troughton's era, right? So they probably just turned around and says, well, we're not bringing him back as such because we've had too many problems. But they did bring back Brian House to do Ice Warrior stories, so they could have asked him to bring him back, but for some reason
you could have slotted him in place of the Master in. Oh God, I mentioned the story just now. The Mind Robber.
Oh, the Mind Robber. Different Master.
But then I suppose you've got the thing of you then have to pay someone else for using their character. So I guess if you can just slot in your own character, that's going to save you a bit on the budget.
That's it, isn't it? Especially because a lot of writers did retain the rights to their characters, didn't they? Certainly that was commonplace back then. So it would have been interesting if it had been revealed, though, that the toy maker was behind the whole of the Master's realm of the Mind Robber. If that was just one of his little worlds that he set up and just left to bimble along.
I think that could have really worked.
New headcanon, there you go, sorry.
We can do, revisionist history.
Would you bring him back in the guise of a Mandarin? Because
I mean,
yes, obviously he's wearing the costume of a Mandarin, but he wasn't. He didn't have a little thin moustache. He wasn't doing a silly accent. I didn't find it as offensive as I was prepared to.
Yeah, that I was told that he was meant to put on the accent, but then he wasn't. He didn't put it on, which sort of helps the story because it's better played as Michael Goss.
It works so much better.
But the fact that he is in the costume.
Maybe it's my naivety as a kid, but when I remember reading about it in The Key to Time, I just assumed celestial meant that he was from space.
Yeah.
But from what I gather, celestial was also a way of referring to.
Well, it wasn't
East Asian.
Yeah, it wasn't until I started watching Deadwood that I was aware that celestial meant something else as well, and that was 20 years ago. So I don't know how common it would have been as an expression in the playgrounds of the 60s.
No.
And I think apart from that outfit, which isn't necessarily, I mean, it's
he likes to dress for the occasion.
Yeah, it's flamboyant. It's kind of like a proto-Valiard, which is probably why I liked his costume so much. But I think it could have been so much more offensive, and I think you can choose to take no offence from it, or I can.
Yeah,
I'm privileged,
Well, now it's been edited, so that a certain thing has been excised from it. The eeny meeny nursery rhyme that the King of Hearts says in its original manner.
My God!
But that's been fudged over now, hasn't it? It's kind of been blurred. So he kind of hums it to himself. So there was definitely an issue with this story that could very directly have a finger pointed at it.
That is absolutely despicable, and I'm mortified now. But Jesus,
it's disappointing, isn't it?
Even by the 60s, you think surely not. But then Agatha Christie's doing it. I don't know when.
Yeah.
When the novel that was renamed 10 Little Indians came, or whatever one it was, I don't know. The one.
I think they renamed it a couple of times.
Yeah. I mean, that must have been around the same sort of time. But, it's so disappointing for a kids' show, for the living room to be.
At tea time on a Saturday.
Right.
Yeah.
You're eating fish and chips. You don't want, racial politics and,
Well, thankfully, we've all moved on, so,
Well, clearly, we live in a wonderful world now where everyone's lovely.
Well...
Unless you miss a penalty.
Yeah. Can you imagine if the internet had existed in the 60s?
Oh, it'd have been hell.
Goodness me. Yeah. Let's not imagine that.
As we all drift off imagining it.
I'm imagining William Hartnell sitting there being really quite offensive onto it to himself.
Yeah. There are some people you just would never want on Twitter. And
Enoch Powell.
Yeah, Jesus.
So the first kind of major... So normally what I do when I watch one of these shows and I'm watching it for the first time, I'll write down notes as I go so that I can try and sound semi-literate and intelligent when I come to do the show. I wrote down precisely 2 notes for this story.
Mm-hmm.
One of them was in part 1. I'll read out what I wrote. It's so weak and bad that the Doctor has already heard of the toy maker somehow. But then when the toy maker appears over his shoulder, the Doctor says, I might have guessed. You just did guess. Now, what do we think? Fluff or the 3 writers between them couldn't make that somehow work?
It doesn't sound like a fluff.
It's a Terry Nation Dennis Spooner thing.
Yeah.
One person wrote one line, and the other person wrote the other, and the other person wrote the third. There you go.
That works. Yep. That answers my question. I won't read out the other note I wrote down because this is supposed to be family friendly.
When did that start?
It's when you told me off for saying fuck. You had to bleep it out every time I said fuck. It really made you cross every time I said fuck.
The first time, I did bleep it out, but after that I just
put the
can't be bothered anymore. Yeah, it's easier, isn't it?
Yeah, it's easier. A lot easier.
Yeah.
Well, thank fuck for that.
Can we pull any positives from this story?
I have one. And purely because you didn't ask me what I thought of Stephen and Dodo in this story. I thought Dodo
from
was,
our previous conversations, I've had, getting a bit of a gist of what you think.
Sure. I thought Dodo was absolutely brilliant. She was fine. It was a great performance. She did the best with what she was given. I don't personally like her as much as Vicky or Susan, but that's no reflection on the actress. And I think she did a
thought she had
really
a very
great job.
groovy outfit.
Very groovy outfit. Good use of hat. You can't go wrong with a hat like that.
No.
So
I should like a hat like that.
Well, watch this space. It's Christmas soon. I don't know, actually. This podcast might go out in something like June, in which case it isn't. It's all very timey-wimey.
In 2050,
Yeah, you won't need a hat by then. You'll need a free bus pass. So she was brilliant. Obviously, I think we're all in agreement that Alfred from Batman was very good as the toy maker.
Yeah.
And it was a really strong performance, even though he was, again, given some fairly weak dialogue, and a lot of it was incredibly repetitive. And I don't want to come over all Nathan Bottomley, but I'm going to use the word tiresome.
Oof. Now there's an image.
I stand by it. It was a perfectly acceptable sentence, young man. Hi,
Nathan, if you're listening.
He was brilliant. Hello, Nathan. You're brilliant.
We love Nathan.
I love Nathan. The toy maker was brilliant. Dodo was brilliant. That's literally all I've got.
That's about it.
That's all I've got.
Jeff, go on, help us out here.
I think actually the two main supporting cast do a really good job. The clown Clara needs to be the silent one. Give her the honking horn and let the male one speak, because that was too much. She's from.
I thought you were self-censoring yourself there for a minute.
She's from
Give
Coventry.
her the honking horn.
She's from Coventry, so she was born in Cov. He's really good.
So her, you, and Delia Derbyshire. That's the 3.
Yeah. Ian Martin.
Terry Hall.
Ian Martin.
Yeah,
but we've got some. And the meddling monk died here as well.
Oh, Sucker, you got to level up the.
The only one I've got is David Dacre.
Wolverhampton. David Dacre,
nice.
Nice, he's good.
It's the only one from the World of Who that I could now definitely came from this area.
They're really good though, and I really love the Mrs. Wiggs, Sergeant Rugg stuff. I really love that. They're fun.
Did you like the idea of them being the same characters each, or the same actors each episode, but changing it up to be
I
different
did,
characters. Did you like that
actually.
idea?
Because they actually got two fairly good character actors.
Yeah.
Which helps at no end. Because you wouldn't necessarily put two and two together. It's certainly not him.
No.
Campbell Singer, he's really good. He's really good.
There is a character we haven't mentioned yet.
Cyril.
And that's Cyril, yes. Ian, do you want to start us off?
No, it's best if I don't, mate.
Oh, please.
What a perfectly reasonable, slightly lukewarm performance of a Billy Bunter analogue.
No, I won't have that. No, he definitely wasn't Billy Bunter for legal
you
reasons.
don't want the estate getting involved.
You can hide behind the letter of the law as much as you will. What letter is it? The letter of the law.
I thought it was quite brazen. He said, "Oh, my name's Cyril, but my friends call me Billy." You're like, okay,
it's not just on the nose. It's literally a broken nose with bone shards dripping down his chubby face. It was, an enjoyably horrible performance because obviously he was supposed to be unlikable.
Yeah,
and what do you know? He succeeded
He achieved
admirably.
it.
He really did.
Yeah.
He over-indexed on being a prick. That might be the best thing I have to say about this episode, listeners. So stay tuned.
Wow. That's going in the trailer. Sucky, give me something positive.
Well, I think we've mentioned the positive, which is Michael Gough. He was great.
Yeah.
The pairing of Stephen and Dodo as I went round, they were good. Sergeant Rugg and Mrs. Weeks. That portion of the episode was great. Right, the way they interacted with each other and shouted at each other. And you needed good character actors, as Jeff says, to be able to bring that to life. And they were good. And the fact that the main guest cast were already cast, I think from what I'm reading, cast before some of these episodes were actually finished writing, completed.
Okay.
Right, they had to keep. They probably hired them just to play the different parts. They've already been hired. We'll just carry on letting them play the different parts all the way through all 4 episodes. And so you needed good character actors, and we got them in this. So
I think at its heart there are some nice ideas. It's that the concept is not bad. I just feel like, I don't know, maybe it's a limitation of what they could achieve on screen at this time, but it does feel like it's just a series of little games and tasks that they have to get through from week to week, and there's not an awful lot of jeopardy, and I don't know, it just didn't really... It wasn't exciting me.
There's a bigger, more interesting story that just is not told. And that's the story of the Doctor and the Toy Maker. We don't get it. We just don't get it. And that's the disappointment from it.
And it's exactly the same problem as when the Doctor met the meddling monk, and that you're braced for this, you know this enemy and you've got this backstory, and this is going to like really flesh out stuff we didn't know about the character and tell us what's been going on kind of before the show started. And completely glossed over. It's like, this is definitely the Toy Maker. I might have known it was you. I think Mark, you've put your finger on it admirably there. It's the paucity of ambition. It's a great concept to have this villain who can only sort of entertain and amuse himself using childish toys and dolls and games, but they're so, and I'm going to use the word poor. If the Toy Maker is an eternal and he's had all of infinity to come up with these games, are we really meant to believe that he's happy rolling out this piss-poor collection of not even half-assed primary school playground entertainments? I mean, Blind Man's Buff, 6 deadly chairs, searching a kitchen for a key that's hidden in a pie, hopscotch. No wonder Peter Purvis looks so livid every time he opens his face. The ideas are so feeble, so ponderous, so slow and boring and moribund that you can't help but feel that this long-venerated classic is in fact the nadir of televised Doctor Who. And if I'd been watching since the start, which in a very real sense I now have, I'd be thinking very seriously about whether or not to stop watching. This is the show's first jumping off point.
I think when we got to Marco Polo, you described it as the what was it again? The Widowmaker. Well, this is this is Everest. This is Olympus Mons.
This is you and me, Mark, outside Southwark divorce courts in cheap, ill-fitting suits, smoking fags before we're up in front of the beak, divvying up the sideboard.
Yeah. But we must go on. We can't let this keep us back. Well,
we've got to go on for the kids, us kids, you know.
Exactly.
Us poor kids, we ain't got a home to go to if you flipping separate. What are we going to do? Go live with Granny?
Do we want to talk slightly about the Nightmare Fair? Because I read the book when it came out, and it was, I think, one of John Nathan Turner's, let's say, 3 good ideas. And don't ask me what the other 2 were, but I'll go with Janet Fielding and the Peter Howell music, for example.
Yeah.
So I think it would have been terrible, obviously, because it would have been in season 23 and it would have had all the problems of that era. But it would have been wonderful to see the Toymaker again, and it would have been a genuinely delicate bit of nostalgic revisiting of the past, rather than let's bring back Omega. Woo woo.
Again.
I think the Nightmare Fair, the problem with it was largely going to be sort of swapping out the childish playground games of the Celestial Toymaker for the sort of nascent computer games of like, and I don't even know what they would have been like, arcade games in '86. I mean, Donkey Kong, but
I mean, the Twin Dilemma had that sort of video game that the 2 twins were playing, I imagine that's the sort of the level of quality graphics you're going to get. Womulus and Weemus.
Vanker and Vanker.
Oh, well, yeah.
So I think in many ways we dodged a bullet, because that had
I think it could have been a modern day Tron.
No, it could have been a modern day Tron guy.
Oh.
The Nightmare Fair would have been at the beginning of the season, so it would have had the money spent on it as well. So it would be better story than what probably would have come later on when the budgets all started drying up and stuff like that. So it might have been a decent story. I have no idea what the story's about. I have read the book and I've listened to, I think it's David Braille who did the audio, but it's just gone completely out of my head. It's just one of these things that I've either read and gone, it was all right, and I've put it away and I've never read it again. And with the audios, it's just something I've probably listened to while I've been at work reading, working on a machine, and it hasn't sunk in at all. So I'm not sure how memorable that Nightmare Fair story would have been.
Well, so I can remember there was, I think the Doctor or Perry were trapped inside a computer game. At the start, they're on the Big Dipper at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. There was a sort of crappy-looking monster on the front cover. Already, I can remember more of the Nightmare Fair than I can of the Celestial Toymaker, and I feel that's because there was rather more in the Nightmare Fair. But yeah, I question whether it could have been realised as written. And who wrote the novel? Was it Graham Williams wrote the novelisation, didn't he?
Graham Williams?
Yeah.
I think so. It rings a bell.
Yeah, everyone's favourite producer. But yeah, I think it would have been. So it would have been kind of brilliant concept, but poorly realised. Whereas the Celestial Toymaker, I think, was a brilliant concept, but poorly Oh, hang on. So yeah, unless anyone else has got anything else to say, let's. I'm going to say one of Mark's lines for a change. This is brilliant. This is anarchy. Let's school this mother.
Okay, who shall we put on the spot first? I think we'll go to Sucky first. What are you going to rate this out of 10, my friend?
Out of 10, it's not a great story. It's got good performances in. It'd probably be a lot better if you saw it rather than listen to it and with the telly snaps. So I'm going to go 4. 4 out of 10.
Okay. Ian.
I'm simply going to throw an idea at you. So they land in this realm that's controlled by this maniac who's obsessed with playing games. Mm-hmm. Imagine how good it would have been if they'd landed in Richard Osman's House of Games.
Oh,
but they didn't. They landed in Michael Goff's House of Games, and they were rubbish games. I'm going to award this story 2 out of 10. One of them is for Michael Goff's performance, and the other one is for his costume, because I really liked it. I do like a swooshy gown. But this is, and I'm astonished that this has happened, because I thought I'd already seen the absolute rock bottom of televised Doctor Who, but this is absolute pig filth, and I wouldn't have, if they brought this out in like a really lovely steel book that was presented to me by Gillian Anderson, sitting on a bed of like £50 notes, and there was like loads of craft beer as well, and I wouldn't have it in the house.
Guns N' Roses performed
Guns N' Roses are
track,
on. They're doing the new single Absurd. They're rolling up the driveway. I'm saying no. Get that out of here. I don't want it in the house.
Well, I'm going to fetch some tissues. I am actually.
Sorry.
I'm going to fetch some tissues right now after that image.
Well, I mean, having heard what they say about you on Proctor Who, that's not a massive surprise there,
I
Saki.
won't believe everything they say. Some of it, yeah, but not everything.
So, Ian, does this mean that you want to go back and watch the Space Museum?
No, it doesn't. It just means that the day I wake up and decide it's all over is just a lot closer now. It's almost here.
Okay.
No, I think
on that note,
I can't imagine Doctor Who's going to get any worse. There can't be anything coming up that's worse than this.
I mean, never say never.
But don't spoil me, because I look forward to anything being this bad, because that would be astonishing, and I would take my hat off to it.
Well, that gives you something to look forward to, doesn't it? Jeff.
I don't think I'm as...
He's lost for words.
I don't think I'm as quite offended by it as everyone else.
Yeah.
Like I said, it doesn't really excite me. Some of the ideas in it excite me, but they don't do anything with them. So it's up for me to do that work. So I'm going to give myself 5 out of 10 for the Celestial Toymaker.
Okay.
I think 5 is... It's just in the middle, isn't it? It's not awful. It's not brilliant. It's just there. It's a Doctor Who story, straight down the middle. That's it.
I like your reasoning. You've obviously thought through what you're going to score it. And
Unlike the rest of us.
No, I've forgotten that you scored them. I made that up on the spot.
Well, it sounded good anyway. Oh, baby Jesus. I am going to give it a... I found it really hard work, I've got to admit. So I didn't cover this when I was asking you guys what your experience was. I think the first time I experienced this was on audio. So you get the linking narration, so that helps a bit to fill in the gaps. But it didn't really leave me desperate for more from the Toymaker. Put it that way. And the recon, it's nothing against the guys that do the recons. They do a really bang-up job, and it made the whole experience that bit better. But, there is a saying, you can't polish a turd. And I am going to award it 1 out of 10.
Whoa! So you didn't even like the swooshy gown?
No, did nothing for me. It's getting a 1 just because of Dodo's outfit. That was pretty funky. She carried it off very well.
Yeah. She's very swinging 60s in that, isn't she?
She really is. We're getting there, aren't we? Doctor Who's taken a while to catch up to the 60s. I think it really lands when Ben and Polly come on board. But that's not quite yet. We're almost there. Anyhow, enough of our meanderings and general depression. Let's go. Let's go over to our listener feedback.
I've got mail.
All right, let's get into your feedback. We have had an absolute ton on this story. Before we get started, we have got a bit of epic feedback on the old audio from our man Andy Moore. Have a listen to this.
Oh, corks! All the other fellas have gone to the tug shop, but I haven't got two beans to rub together. What a rotten swizz! Lummy, who the devil are you? Nice dress, by the way. You may refer to me as the Celestial Toy Maker, Billy Bunter, and I can provide you with all the confectionery you desire. All you must do is work for me, and this is clearly not a dress. Work for you? Lummy, why would a fancy-looking fella like you need a fat owl like me to work for you? It is a dress, though. Because reasons, Bunter. Also, I shall require you to change your name to Cyril. You can't just get a fella to change his name. Why do I have to do that? Because reasons. You're not alone in having to change your name, Cyril. Behold.
Where the hell am I?
Cripes, it's Bertie Bassett. You weren't kidding about the confectionery.
Bertie Bassett? No, I am the candy...
Let me at him.
What are you doing? Stop! Stop! No!
Cyril, wait.
No!
Cyril, I ordered to stop, Cyril. Cyril! Too blooming late, CT. I'm halfway into his coconut ring already. Bunter, you fat owl!
Chaps, what did you make of that?
That was incredible. Oh.
Very good.
Technical difficulties, man. I'll find out when I listen back to the episode.
I think at this point we just step down and let Andy take over.
Yeah.
And just do it as a sort of Chris Morris style radio comedy sketch show thing.
Isn't absolute genius.
That's incredible. Oh,
Thank you again, Andy. Anyway, let's crack on with our other feedback. So, starting off on Twitter, we have heard from Cow Josh Bebop at Bebop Josh, and they say, one of my favourite First Doctor stories. Great villain, clever way to give William Hartnell a break mid-story, and a creative story all round. There was a planned return of the Toymaker during the Sixth Doctor's lost season called The Nightmare Fair. An audio adaptation exists. Thank you very much, Josh. Next up, we have heard from the Crinoid podcast, our dear friend Jim. Jim says, an interesting left field idea and a good performance from Michael Gough, but the games are a bit tedious and overlong and the plot requires Dodo to be a credulous dunderhead. Quite a good story for Stephen, but if I remember correctly, Peter Purvis hates it. Well, yeah, it's understandable, isn't it? Thank you, Jim. Next up, over on Facebook, we have heard from friend of the show, David Kitchen. Hello, David. David says, bear in mind, this guy's a primo #1 Hartnell fan. As a boy, I had episode 4 on cassette and I thought it was amazing. I still enjoy the final episode and find episode 2 rather spooky, but episode 3 is very dull. Not as wonderful as its reputation in the 80s suggested, not as bad as its modern reputation would suggest. It's an okay oddball story. Wow, I mean, that is, coming from David, that's really damning with faint praise.
Surprising.
And we've also heard from Gary Finney-Zare, who says, to be honest, I find it rather overrated. Not a fan at all. Yeah, well, it sounds like you're not on your own there, Gary. Thank you for that. Back to Twitter, and we have heard from the lovely Nathan Bottomley. And Nathan says, this barely qualifies as an actual story. Plotless, dull, and completely free of interesting characters. Unspeakably tiresome and a bit racist. Avoid. Yes, he summed it up in one sentence where, you know, we've been blathering on about it for the last hour.
He's a very pithy individual.
He really is.
Yeah.
Also from the Twitter sphere, our dear friends over at Who Can Convince You, I think this is Harry, he says, interesting first episode, but after that it's just a whole episode for a simple game. Cyril is a successful character, I think. If the games weren't so dull, I think it would help the story, but we really don't need to watch 25 minutes of Blind Man's Buff. Is that a euphemism? Anyway.
If it was, I'd rather watch 25 minutes of that.
Well, I mean, each their own. That's fine. Thank you, Harry. We've also heard from David Spooner at David SP1635114. Just rolls off the tongue. I would love this to be found. It seems like an interesting concept. I do love Michael Gough's interpretation of the Toymaker in the existing episode. Wish he'd returned for future stories with maybe the second or third Doctors. Could have worked, possibly. In the right hands. Thank you, David. We've also heard from James H. at fitgeek_UK. And they say, absolutely love it. It's a very high on my list of stories I wish existed. Yeah. Just goes to prove there's a fan for every story.
Doesn't it?
Good for you. Next up, we have heard from Deb, our guest all the way back, way back. Can you remember, Ian, when we did...
It's
looking really blank. Yeah.
Was this the start of Series 3?
He's blind drunk at the moment. How's he going to remember all the way back?
Not only am I blind drunk, but also you're asking me to recall things that we recorded 30 years ago. No, I don't remember the start of Season 3. My God. It just keeps on going.
When we did Mission to the Unknown, we had a fabulous guest called Deb who came on, and she was brilliant.
I do remember, really.
And, yeah. And she has this to say about the Celestial Toymaker. I love Stephen's jumper! Exclamation point. Well,
it's all about fishing for those little positives that you can take.
You really are. Yeah.
Yeah.
And lastly from me, we have heard from 42 to Doomsday, which I believe is another one of those Australian Doctor Who podcasts. And they say... That's at 42 to Doomsday, by the way. And they say, the second Doctor Light story of Season 3. You think John Wiles has it in for Hartnell. But dull, to be honest. I would love to read the scripts before Jerry Davies got his hands on it. Yeah, that could have been interesting. Nice one.
I think all of mine are from Twitter. So, firstly, I've heard from Ham-Fisted Bapvender, who doth say, love the offbeat premise. Stephen Taylor's performance anchors it all together. John Wood's set designs are eye-catching, and the resolution is rather neat. Oh, and having glimpsed just a few screen grabs in one of Haining's books, I adored episode 4 when it came out on the Hartnell Years VHS. So thanks for that. I'm not entirely sure I can endorse that, but that's his opinion. The Doctor Who show says possibly the first Target I bought for myself, and as a result I felt very grand sitting up in bed reading this weird story at night of a TV adventure I could never hope to see. It's what buys it a pass with me to this very day. Major personal nostalgia for me. So that's nice. These are all very positive. I'm noticing. It's getting quite hard to read. It's like something stuck in my throat. Jed Sweeney says, viewed through today's prism, it probably doesn't fare well. E.g., the less said about the use of that particular version of Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo, the better. Right, no, yes, absolutely. I do love the premise, though. And he is right. It was a good premise, just followed through with all the vigour of a sock falling down some stairs. Anthony Carroll says, probably the weakest episode that exists. I thank you, I rest my case. I find it a hard watch. Set looks great from other episodes, and dancing dolls could have looked threatening, but not a fan. And then Gallifrey's Most Wanted says, I absolutely love it.
Hi, Ross.
Hello, Ross. Are you okay, Ross? Do you need help? Are you reaching out? Do you want to talk? I absolutely love it, he says. It is
We'll
weird.
find out next week.
Yeah. It is weird and quirky. I know I am in the minority. Well, we've all tried that defence, Ross. It is an experiment, yes. Is it a success? No. Could it be better? Yes, as a 3-parter. And that, I think, is a good point. If it was slightly truncated and some of those ponderous games were slightly less tedious, then yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Finally, Tom on Twitter, at T19M96. I don't believe that's his real name. I think he's probably called Tom. He says, the toy maker needs to return in the show. And I think he's absolutely bang on there. Probably a different actor now, but I think
Possibly,
it would still be brilliant.
Thank you, guys. And now we'll go over to Sucky. Who have you heard from, Sucky?
Okay, no worries. We've got all these are all on Twitter. These so I've got Loza, and it's at Loz the Valyard, and he's put a character and a concept that promises more than the story delivers. Take away everyone's notion of what the toy maker should be, a godlike trickster ruling a surreal nightmare dimension, from the equation, and what you're left with is Stephen and Dodo taking it in turns to act like complete idiots while they dutifully trudge through a few parlour games, whilst the two most interesting characters sit in a room. Or there would be if one of them wasn't absent most of the time. Yes, cheers.
Very succinct.
Yeah. We have mentioned it should have been there for that. Next up, we have Lord Steerforth, and they put, my mother-in-law was one of the evil dolls. I'm tempted to make a Les Dawson style joke about typecasting. We're annoyed that her episodes were junked. It's
a shame, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Right, next up we have Anthony Forth, and he's put, one of the worst stories ever, like a children's party in weekly instalments. Lovely.
Yeah. No, not too far off.
Cheers, Anthony. Next up we have Card Witching Saints. I'm not sure if there's anything more to that handle, but it doesn't seem to come up. But they've put, I have complex feelings. The Celestial Toymaker is a very interesting character, being an all-powerful madman who just wants to F with you. But gosh, it's a dull story. Not helped by the fact most of the parts are missing.
Yeah, that's a fair comment.
Would you have tweeted me out if I'd have said the F word?
No.
Oh, fuck. And then next up, but he's called C. Christopher Hart. If it existed, we'd all probably wish it didn't. Cheers, Chris.
Harsh but fair. Well, you never know. We might get a discovery and there might be a whole new fan base for that story that didn't exist before. You never know.
The animation, here it comes.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. And Jeff, who have you heard from?
All on Twitter again. So you've got Bonnie, at Bonnie68. Dull, worthy idea, but execution is wanting. Fair. Casey Jones at Clever Case. I keep meaning to write him a game mod. I find him original and fascinating. I presume he's referring to the toy maker themselves.
Yeah, that could be quite a cool idea.
It could. Jeff
Doctor Who game?
at Jeff Grumpy, which is a fantastic name, and I may have to steal that because my name's spelt differently. He was different from the usual adversaries, and it was like a game of chess. He could do with an upgrade, but the concept appealed as the games played were echoes of our own childhood games.
Very good.
Philip Edney from Sirens of Audio. He's left.
Hello, Philip.
He's left a 2-tweet comment. So this big breath. The Celestial Toymaker is an excellent 2-part story. Sadly, stretched it to 4 parts. Sometimes you just don't have enough plot to go around. Unfortunately, the ideas that could have paid off weren't capitalised on, such as an immortal being with a grudge against the Doctor. Things that we just don't care about. The games became the focus of the episode. Michael Goff is a brilliant actor, underused, and once again, Dodo isn't that bad. She has a far worse rap than she deserves. Peter Purvis once again holds everything together. And then
I think that's a good one.
I've got Nigel Horsler at Horsler Nigel. Wish they could find the missing episodes to this or animate it. It's clever, weird, and very entertaining. They should bring back the Toymaker.
Thank you all so much for your feedback. It's great to hear from everyone who tweets and emails in. And if you want to send us some audio like Andy did, you'll be able to hear all the various ways of contacting us on our end credits. So it just leaves us to thank our esteemed guests, Mr. Jeff and Mr. Sucky. Thank you both so much for coming on. Sorry that you had to... Yes.
Thank you.
And before you head off, would you like to give a little plug to what you've got going on? We'll come to Jeff first.
This is the second podcast I've recorded in 24 hours because, as Mark well knows, I record with Ross quite regularly for the Runcible Report, which is part of Gallifrey's Most Wanted podcast, which is turning into a little podcast family. It's spawning, which is frankly a terrifying concept.
Sounds like a crinoid.
We discussed yesterday, although by the time this comes out, it was probably months ago. Season 10.
All right.
Season 10 of Doctor Who.
Yeah.
John Pertwee's penultimate season, which was a lovely conversation that we had. And of course, Mark's been on a few times. And I knock up
great fun.
dodgy fan art on the Twitter as at Gallifrey Gothic.
Yes, I think you're being a bit harsh on yourself there, my friend.
Fantastic artwork.
Yes, very. You're being very humble there. I wouldn't be. I'd be bellowing from the rooftops. If I was that good, I'd
be telling everyone.
Look at my artwork. I'd be saying that I did digitally. I'm assuming.
I do most of it on my phone, which is terrifying.
Yeah.
God, some people.
That's impressive. And Sucky.
Yes.
Give us a plug.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm a member of the Plug True podcast with Bob and Craig and John and Cliff, who's just recently joined us. And
Cliff Richards.
Yes, he'd like to be known as Cliff Richard, but he isn't.
Oh.
He's definitely not Cliff. Right. There was a 7th anniversary podcast that Mark did with Bob and Craig, and they did separate. And then Bob mentioned everybody apart from Cliff. Right, so I've definitely gone round making sure that I mentioned Cliff this time round.
Big up for Sheps. He's got his own podcast as well, hasn't he? Sheps Deep Dive.
Yeah. Classic. Which is also part of the Lynch Mob. Lynch Mob is part of that Sheps Deep Dive podcast. I've also recently taken out from Bob from Trek This Out podcast, which is a Star Trek review podcast. And that's with John, Lindsay, and Andrea. And me and John are also bringing back Take Your Seats podcast, which is sort of put to the one side last year at Christmas, knowing that we'll be back to it in probably January, February. And then other things got in the way, such as us playing Dungeons and Dragons every Monday. And that just we got so much into Dungeons and Dragons. And then COVID hit, and then I had my daughter's wedding, and it just got waylaid. And then we made the decision this week, we're going to bring it back. And so we asked for guest hosts. And what happens? We got 6 months worth of guest hosts, which is fantastic.
That says a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah. So, but if anybody wants to come on as a guest host for Take Your Seat, just go to the Puck True Facebook page, and I have a list of 100 sci-fi movies on there, which we haven't covered on the podcast because we've got about
Ian's writing it down right now. He's going to go on
70 episodes.
He's going to apply for 10 of the movies.
You can do. You won't get scheduled till about June, July next year, though.
Will we still be talking about season 3 by then?
Yeah, very possibly.
And you can find me on Twitter at Cyberman_151.
Hi, this is Future Mark. Yeah, I know, right? Timey-wimey. Since we recorded this episode, Sucky, John, Bob, Cliff and Craig have created a new Doctor Who podcast. It's called Around the Console. And I'll be putting some links in the show notes so you can check it out. Okay, as you were. Brilliant. Excellent. Thank you both so much for coming on and being guests. It's been an absolute blast.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
So until next time, I've been Mark.
I've been Ian.
I've been Sucky.
And I am still Jeff. It's tragic.
And Mark, I'm hoping that before the end credits, there'll be a really crappy riddle that even a 3-year-old could solve.
I couldn't get any of them.
Oh.
If you'd like to get in touch, you can email us at mailbagofrassilon@gmail.com. We're also on Twitter @TimeEndSpacePod, and you can also find us on Facebook. If you want to leave some audio feedback, there is a link in the show notes. You can use your phone or your computer and leave up to 60 seconds of feedback, or if you're listening via the Anchor website, you can click on the message button and leave your audio. We'd love to hear from you. And thank you to Momo Tempo for providing our theme music. And there we have it. Excellent.
I was so looking forward to the Mind Probe. I really was. I've been practicing.
Are you disappointed?
Yeah, I was researching questions
Were
on
you hoping to be
1960
tossed into the time lash?
1965, 1966, just in case it went that way, or on the fashion of the decade, or whatever else Ian's twisted mind would come up with.
Oh dear.
Yeah, I can't even remember why we stopped doing it now. I think it's
because you couldn't be asked to do the research for the questions.
I find that very hard to believe, and also mildly offensive that my professionalism could be called into question when I'm sitting here giving up my Saturday night. We will be sort of bringing it back in a slightly more organised and less shambolic format. So next time you guys are on, we will subject you to a full trivia-based brain ramming.
Give you the
what
sort
you
of,
should do is invest in the Doctor Who quiz book by Matthew Robinson, and just get them.
The one with the Sixth Doctor on the cover.
Well, I think it's one of them. Well,
yeah,
I'm sure it's Matthew Robinson.
I've got one, but it was written by Nigel Robinson.
Nigel Robinson, not Matthew Robinson.
Yeah, no, I've got that. But it's all questions about Android. Or every time I open it, it's a question about bloody Android.
Not a fan.